I know you've worked on a ton of shoes in the past, from the React Hyperdunks to the Adapt BBs, and now this, and then the second iteration. Talk to me. What do the viewers need to know about the Zoom Freak 2s?
Great intro. I would say the biggest one is we're upon a new athlete archetype with Giannis, and his physique, his style, his dominance is completely new to the game. When you see somebody like him that is new and that provides new problems, I mean, it's very exciting for visionaries, for design teams, for anybody that likes to solve problems. I would say within the Zoom Freak 2, we are evaluating his game as if he is evolving and he's telling us and showing us what he's evolving into. Outriggers are a very sensitive kind of place to design in terms of a shoe. You have to keep an outrigger at a very specific spot when you look at the length of this. How much it comes out has to be specific. And the way of the geometry and how it moves up this radius has to be specific, and I'll tell you why. One, because you're using more platforms, so you're gaining stability from an outrigger. You also have more ground contact to the outrigger, right? You increase your net, your width. There's a blend when you create product, and we call it art, science, and story. Well, with Giannis, the complexity of his movements, the complexity of him as an athlete and making a solution for him, we have to take all the complexity and make it simple. But when we look at this product and we say how simple it is, once I start to do that, look at how complex that is. The geometries, the surfacing, the parts and pieces, the integration, the stitching, all of those things in that type of viewpoint is super complex. But when I do that, it's very simple. So that's just an approach to design, and one that was from the voice of Giannis. It's what he wanted. When he was going through and we were talking to him on one of our first meetings about this shoe, what was happening was he was consistently doing that, right? Kept doing that. And what that meant and what he was talking about was speed. He wanted speed. He didn't want, shapes to kind of overcome the top of the toe tip. And so when I take this away and I keep doing that gesture, that's the gesture that he would comment on in terms of design. Now, when you look at that gesture and you look at the shoe, right? You take these pieces, you do that, and that became, a bit of the workings to this model. Our our foot form from the 1 to the 2 hasn't changed, right? But when you look at the toe down, you see how sleek that is? He is an athlete that looks at proportion and stance. And from just a designer, I love that, because, people always want the shoe to look good on their foot. They always want it to feel and look flattering. That was a heavy focus every gate that we would look at this, every round of sample, all the communication with our factory and our vendors and our partners. We made sure that we nailed what he was looking at from stance and proportion.
Can you run down some little details on the shoes?
Yeah, I'm going to go from the bottom to the upper. So from the bottom, what we did was we decoupled the forefoot and the heel. There's a shank inside to produce torsional rigidity, which is an element that we know in basketball needs to be there for the stability of our athletes. The reason why this is decoupled with what we call a credit card shank is because we want the sensation and perception of heel and forefoot. And when he's transitioning down the court and making those Euro step moves, he's able to basically use a little bit of that motion and decouple hitting here and hitting here. When we look at the technology that we've used, we've incorporated our Zoom bag right up into the forefoot. In some colorways you'll see this, otherwise you'll see it in tech specs. But the way that we loaded this in there is what we call a mid-load or a mid-stack, meaning that there's no material right at the center point of your med head between the bag and the rubber and the bag and the sock liner. So there's no foam above that. What that does is it gives you direct interaction with Zoom, which is our most responsive technology. We know that. Response means that what you put in is what you get back, right? You put all your energy into it, you get it right back. You don't lose any of it. In the heel, we wanted to disperse and absorb that power, that impact that he's coming down with, right? So none of it's going back. We want to make sure that that expels outward and into the material. As we go to the upper, this was very crucial because what we did with Giannis was we showed every part and piece and went over what it was doing. If you see this piece in the forefoot, you'll know that it's about stability. And you'll know that it's about stability on that movement like that, all right? If you look at this midfoot TPU piece, you'll know that when basketball athletes put normal lateral and medial pressure, that this is a moment to stabilize that motion. In between, we produced a gap because the foot likes to flex and we don't want to inhibit its flex. So we're breaking those two TPU wings, a la Greece, Athens, Giannis, wings with flexibility in the forefoot. When you look above that, we have the swoosh. The swoosh in this one was a big topic of conversation. Giannis wanted this to be highlighted very bold, but in addition, he wanted it to be an element that was purposeful. Support in terms of himself, in terms of the brand, in terms of the message, the connection, the relatability of him to consumers, but also support from the standpoint of physical material support for performance. We asked the Nassus, we asked Giannis, we asked the brothers to start sketching. And we brought some of those elements into the swoosh as a connection of that hand, that person, that human into the shoe. When we start to move around the shoe and we look more at the toe and that forefoot, you'll see that it's all textile driven. We've come up with an acknowledgement as to how to reinforce and stabilize an athlete, but allow that athlete to not have to break the shoe in. Meaning that what you get out of the box is what you wear and it doesn't change throughout time. First time you feel it is what it's going to feel like. The mobility of this material and letting the feet kind of move and the toes move is extremely important to the control that an athlete like him needs on court. Now, when you look at the panels of that lateral side to tongue to medial side, you're going to get different materials placed. And so a little bit about the construction is that the tongue goes into the medial arch to conform around that shape. The arch in everybody is different. If we were to say morphology about all athletes, what's different? The arch is probably the most predominant change that happens across human. And so what we did was we made materials that conformed, and we also brought really high-end leathers to the medial side to support. The angle of the stitching was relative to what we saw his steps like. When an athlete goes like this and like that, right? And does that type of hop, that's what became sort of the directionality for these types of stitches used. So another Easter egg is there's tack marks on the top of these TPU clips. These 12 tack marks indicates him at 12 years old, picking up the basketball and falling in love with the sport for one of the first times. Charles and Veronica, those are his parents. That's the people that created and supported him. Down to inside the sock liner. The I am my father's legacy. The reason why it's on the sock liner this time is because we wanted it to touch the sole of the foot first. Here's a little hidden one. Freak, right?
Yep.
Can you read what that says?
Is it underneath or is it on the side?
It says the number 2. So
is it?
Yeah. So there's right at this outrigger edge, it has a number 2. If he does his move, you'll line up freak 2 when you see the shoe. It's like fun things, and you kind of have to know they're there. But as a design team, we just look at these like moments that, all right, if we're going to design after that step, if we're going to bring speed and bring power, and that athlete is going to unlock that move to do, you'll see an unlock. Another little point of traction. So this traction, although could seem like very small nubs, is meant for abrasion. So you can wear this indoor and outdoor. From the heel, and you'll get a better picture of this. I don't want to, go too deep into this one, but this is a map and a journey of where he came from, where his ancestry is, and where he's gone to. So it's a path and a bit of a map. This shoe, this Giannis 2, is at $120.
I think we covered everything. I just have one more question for you. So obviously you're a Nike designer. You've designed a lot of shoes. Is your collection full of samples and prototypes, or does Nike keep it in a vault and they don't let you take those on?
A little sneaker talk. Okay. One, my sneaker collection is really big. And I won't give the number, but I'll kind of tell you, I don't wear any of the shoes.
You probably just keep them as prototypes and samples.
I mean, they're like the ones that are in my collection are ones that hit the market at some point. But I will say, like, I have a different engagement with shoes because we work on them so much, and I know how big the team is. I know what we do with our factory partners, and it's honestly a work of art as much as it is a shoe. These are pieces of art that we wear. So my respect value is that of keep them in the box because I just know the amount that goes into them. That's just me personally. From a standpoint of all the shoes that I have, anything that I work on or that the team works on, because I get to lead a fantastic, one-of-a-kind team of a lot of people within Nike basketball footwear, I have them because I'm evaluating where we're going as our next step. So I would say, on the other side of this camera exists some of the future, but that's some of the fun of the job.
Fair enough. I mean, I don't blame you. I mean, I've been collecting them like trophies too. I mean, they're proud pieces of work. So.
Yeah, I'm always interested in what other people have. It's kind of fun. As a design team, we always talk about that. We go back and forth.